Well, thank you for letting me share for a moment today. It's our prayer for you that during this hour that you would find a window of rest, that our time together would feel like a sacred pause in the busyness of life where your heart and your soul would be refreshed. We hope that you can take this moment and realize that you are in the good company of others who are walking this challenging journey as well. May we gain strength from one another, knowing that we are not alone on this path. Well, I'm sure we can all agree that life doesn't always turn out as we expect, just the opposite, right? Our journeys are painful, joyful, and utterly complex, and often all at the same time. And for most of the unique challenges that we face, there is no magic pill or silver bullet for a quick solution. I know we have all had seasons where we wonder if the load will ever lighten or if the gray sky will ever be brighter again. And I know many of us may be feeling that way exactly today. I have found through the thick and thin of it, no matter the season or what part of the cycle we find ourselves in, that against all odds, there is light at the end of the tunnel and there is hope for the journey ahead. That doesn't mean that our loved ones will be healed, but that there is hope for moving forward, for becoming stronger and resilient in the midst of our circumstances and being able to move ahead. There are many sacred rituals and practices that can help to fortify our lives, that can rejuvenate our hearts and spirits. But today I'd like to share two. One of my favorite readings, and one spiritual practice that has been especially meaningful to me when the days seem dark and the landscape of my life seem very heavy. Both have provided a brighter light for me at the end of the tunnel, and I hope they do for you as well. The reading comes from the novel Hind's Feet in High Places. It's an allegory, a beautiful allegory written by Hannah Hurnard that follows the journey of a young woman named Much Afraid. And I so related from Much Afraid from the minute I picked up the book. Much Afraid lives in the valley of humiliation, a place filled with fear, insecurity, and the judgment of her family, known as the Fearings. Her closest relatives, now get this, her closest relatives are craven fear, gloomy, spiteful, and others in the family are resentment, bitterness, and self-pity. You may think you have a bad family line, but check out that one again. Craven fear, gloomy, spiteful, resentment, bitterness, and self-pity. Not the people you want to hang out at the family reunion, right? Much Afraid longs to transcend her current experience and escape the life in which she feels trapped. But most often she finds herself a victim of her circumstances. And I think that can be very easy to relate to. She longs for a deeper, more meaningful existence where she can escape the grim reality of her life. She dreams of rising above her circumstances and she yearns to reach the high places with the Good Shepherd. As the title says, Hind's Feet in High Places, it's from the Psalm 18:33. For he makes my feet like the feet of the deer, and he causes me to stand on the heights. Some of the other versions have phrases like, he makes me secure. He makes me sure-footed to stand on the heights. He enables me to scale the wall, to run like a deer, to make it through each and every challenge that I encounter, even today, right now, with all that's on my plate, with all that I am feeling. In the allegory, Much Afraid receives an invitation from God, this beautiful invitation from the Good Shepherd to leave all of her fears behind, all of those family members behind, and to embark on a transformative journey up the mountain. It's the same beautiful, softly whispered invitation that he gives to each and every one of us every day. But here is the clincher, the whole clincher of the book for me. He provides for her journey two very unexpected companions, sorrow and suffering. Who wants companions like that? What kind of a good shepherd gives sorrow and suffering? But while she was very hesitant to embark on the climb with those two companions, she takes a step of faith and she sets off on a courageous expedition. I just want to pause for a minute and say that each one of us are on a courageous expedition as well. We didn't anticipate these circumstances. We didn't anticipate these challenges and losses. We didn't anticipate and weren't prepared for the sorrow and suffering that would interject with our life. And for that, I just want to say we are courageously inching forward and taking steps forward, even on the days where it's hard to get out of bed, even for the days when it's hard to put both feet on the floor and tackle just what's next. We are on a courageous expedition because we're not giving up. Throughout the adventure, Much Afraid confronts her deepest fears and she endures hardships and obstacles, numerous hardships and obstacles. She falls over and over again, but each time she rises up and she takes another step. And in each circumstance, she learns to lean on the Good Shepherd. She trusts his guidance. And despite the seemingly insurmountable difficulties in her path, she moves ahead. As she navigates the trials of her journey, she uncovers some amazing things. She uncovers the power of faith, even a small mustard seed of faith, because some days that's all we can muster up, just one small mustard seed of faith. And her two companions, the two unlikely companions, the companions none of us want in our life, they became life lessons in the necessity of embracing both joy and sorrow as essential aspects of life. The best part is at the end of the story, when she does reach the mountaintop against all odds, the Good Shepherd changes her name. I don't know if any of you have read the book, remember, but she changes from Much Afraid to Grace and Glory. It was quite a transformative journey and very inspiring to behold. I love the grace and glory part. I think I especially love the grace, just thinking that God's grace is sufficient for me. God's grace is sufficient for you, sufficient for each of us on this call, no matter our circumstances, no matter our hardships, that we can be transformed to at times much afraid, where we are walking with those families of fear and bitterness and resentment and self-pity. And we are in the process of being transformed, even on the days that it doesn't feel like it, to grace and glory because of his goodness in our life. The things I love about Much Afraid, honestly, is everything. I hope to become like her in the process of my journey. But I'm going to name just 4 things that really stood out to me that were her life lessons in the book. The first one is the power of choice. She discovers that she has the power to choose love over fear, and that her daily small choices ended up shaping the reality of all of her future. I love that she learned the strength that she found in confronting her fears. She faces craven fear, the worst of all of her relatives, several times throughout the journey, learning that she must confront her anxieties rather than allowing them to dictate her existence. Each victory over her fears created a stronger, more resilient version of herself. The third lesson is that she found strength in her vulnerability. This is probably one of my favorite. Much Afraid learns that acknowledging her vulnerabilities can be a source of strength, that she embraced all of her emotions instead of running from them, and it changed the course of her life. You know what that does? It provides a warm invitation for us to have the messiest life ever, the messiest emotions ever, difficulties in our past, difficulties in our current, but by embracing those emotions, those vulnerabilities become our strength because it allows God to show up in each and every one of those emotions. It allows us not to run from those, but to face them head on and be kind and gracious. We have those emotions for a reason. Our circumstances can be overwhelming at times, but our vulnerabilities paves the way for God to work in those tender and sweet places in our life. And then the hardest one for me is the last one, is that there was many lessons from sorrow and suffering. And while sorrow and suffering initially seem like huge burdens to Much Afraid, little by little, she begins to appreciate their value. And I can't say I'm exactly at her spot yet. I'd like to be. I'd like to be able to view my sorrow and sufferings and all of our sorrow and sufferings in that way. But what I learned from reading Much Afraid is that, as gut-wrenching as it was at times, that they guided her toward deep insights about her life. They ended up in the process of this long and painful journey, cultivating an unshakable resilience. And ultimately, they created a pathway for her to reach the top of the mountain. One of my favorite authors, Frederick Buechner, speaks to the same principle. He says the sad things that happened will always remain part of who we are. But instead of a burden of regret that makes us constantly stumble as we go, even the saddest things can become, this is the key, once we have made peace with them, a source of wisdom and strength for the journey that still lies ahead. Let me repeat that part. It's worth repeating. Even the saddest things in our life, once we have made peace with them, can become a source of wisdom and strength for the journey that still lies ahead. The story of Much Afraid, ultimately, it's about a courageous expedition, and it's about the transformative power of love. Which leads me to the second ritual. One was inspiring reading. Second one is a daily practice of remembering what's true. Simply just remembering what's true. We did that in our breath prayer this morning as we breathed in and out the verses that Catherine read to us. We did that as we listened to Megan. She said, God of hope, fill me with all joy and peace. She reminded us that we can move forward with a God of hope. And so I want to take a moment and think of some creative ways that we can remember what's true. And let's start with this transformative power of love that Much Afraid experience. Romans 8:38-39 says, for I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Death can't and life can't. Our fears today, our worries about tomorrow, or where we are high above the sky or in the deepest ocean, nothing will be able to separate us from the love of God. Lamentations 3:23, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. So great is his faithfulness. Do you think Much Afraid needed a reminder when she was on those steep cliffs, when she was about face to face with bitterness, with self-pity, with resentments and fear? You bet. She needed those reminders. And you know what? We need those reminders too. We all need that. We all need a moment to remember what is true. Let's look at Proverbs 4:23 to set the stage for how a daily practice can keep our hearts renewed. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything else you do flows from it. Guard your heart. Another version says, be careful what you think. Listen to this, for your thoughts run your life. Those are pretty big statements. You could see that in the verse, two versions. One addresses our heart. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Be careful for what you think, for your thoughts run your life. So our guarding our heart and our mind sets the course for our life. Philippians 4:8 goes on to even say more about this. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure and lovely and admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And another version says, summing it up all, my friend, summing it all up, my friends. I love this part. I'd say to you, you'll do best by filling your mind and meditating on things that are true and noble and reputable and authentic, compelling and gracious. The best, not the worst. The beautiful, not the ugly. Things to praise, not things to curse. I've heard it said, though, that positive thoughts are like Teflon. They tend to go right out of our mind. But negative thoughts, they're like Velcro, and they just tend to stick there. That's so unfair. Teflon and Velcro. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with the high calling of being very intentional of how we guard our heart and how we guard our mind. And remembering what's true can be a simple daily practice of just bringing in some of your favorite verses, some phrases from a favorite song, things that remind you of God attributes, things that remind you of his truths. So in the midst of very difficult circumstances, they can coexist with your heart clinging to, yes, this is happening over here, but yet this is true. I am going to hide in the shadow of your wings. You will never leave me nor forsake me. You can have a couple of those on your phone, on your screensaver, in the backpack of your backpack, and that you can have a way to remember what's true. I'd like to leave you with maybe just one moment of reading you a few things that are true. Another way is just to Google God's Bible promises or God's attributes. There's another one called God's Love Letter. It's at the Father's, let's see what is, I can't remember what website it is. I think we'll have it in the chat. I think it's like thefatherslove.com, but it's paraphrased verses of his promises of how he feels towards you. So as I end my time, I'd love you just to maybe take a deep breath, maybe close your eyes and let the truth, remembering what's true of how God feels about you, wash over your heart and soul. I know everything about you. I know when you sit and when you rise up. I am familiar with all of your ways. I knit you together in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. In me you live and move and have your being. It's my desire to lavish my love on you. Simply because I am your father, my plans for you are filled with a future and a hope. I am also the father who promises to comfort you in all of your troubles. When you are brokenhearted, I am close to you. When you go through the deep waters, I am with you. As a shepherd carries a lamb, I carry you close to my heart. One day I will wipe away every tear from your eyes, for I love you with an everlasting love, and nothing will ever separate you from my love. Come to me, my beloved, and you will find rest for your souls. Amen. Thank you so much for letting me share.